Hi, very good morning to you. It's Jim from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, if you're reading between the lines, it's very easy to work out things. Now, just this morning I was uploading a video to YouTube, and before I was about to publish it, YouTube notified me that there was some copyright issues, so fair enough. I don't have a problem with YouTube, notifying me that there's such issues. So I retracted the video, and I'm going to talk about those things that I was talking about in this video with you guys. So, I'm not nitpicking on YouTube, but I do have some serious issues with YouTube when they, are trying to tell me I can't talk about certain subjects. And it's not just talking about certain subjects, it's actually being victimised for talking about those subjects, and it's clear as daylight that's exactly what they did. I'm surprised nobody has sued them. But what I mean by reading in between the lines, it's obvious what's going on here, and it wasn't that obvious for me at the beginning, but now it's clearly obvious. First of all, let's look what YouTube have done. I got a strike early on in the year for talking about a vaccine. Now, I studied biology. I'm qualified to talk about such matters as vaccines, how they're made, how they're tested, regardless. But I got a strike for that. Now, my question is to you is, what business is that of YouTube's or even Google's? It's nothing, is it? They're a computer technology company that, provide a search engine that has happened to buy up a platform like YouTube. But it's not them that are, going out their way to penalise people for talking about certain subjects. Like recently, the CO2 matter. We was talking about that, and they threatened a month before they was going to shut down the advert revenue for any channel on YouTube or any website that was having an alternative view as to what the causes were of climate change. Again, this has nothing to do with a high-tech company like Google and a search engine company. This has to do with government agendas. End of story. It's the governments that are putting pressure on Google and in turn putting pressure on YouTube because they want to drive their agenda. This is propaganda at its most obvious. But the point is, it has nothing to do with these companies at all, but the governments are using them. And more to the point is that the governments, if they was to do this, if they was to go out after people for talking about certain subjects, they would be held absolutely accountable, as I showed you is the case in the human rights law in the UK. We are protected from authorities abusing those rights. So what the authorities have done is use companies like Google and YouTube and other platforms that we see to do the victimising and commit those atrocities against human rights. This is the legal loophole that they use, because I think you would agree, I don't think Google could really give a shit whether we spoke about climate, what the causes were of climate change, or about vaccines. These are more issues related to government agendas right now. So when I said at the beginning of this video, if you look in between the lines or reading between the lines, you see exactly what's going on. So we are living in a day and age where the democracy has never been so under threat since the 1940s, and I'm talking about the acts of aggression that was used before 1940s by people we should never have ever thought we would deal with again, and those are Nazis. And I'm not joking here. You want to call them a more modern name that fits the same description, it's exactly that. They are Nazis, and we should be very concerned about this, because now we've got corporations with more power than any government in this world, and I'll explain why that is. If you look at Facebook, for instance, they have boasted recently that they have 4 billion people subscribed to Facebook. There isn't a country in the world that has 4 billion people, and that's a lot of influence, and they're using it, governments are, as a tool to, you know, inject their little bit of propaganda into other countries. But they're also using it to victimise people. You see, what the government have very cleverly done is shifted the responsibility of an authority to corporations and allowed a legal loophole for them to exploit those human rights like they're doing now. They should be ashamed of themselves in acting in such a manner, and secondly, not telling the public who subscribe to them and have put money in their pockets through buying their services and using their services. They should be ashamed of their behaviour, because what we're talking about is acts against humans' rights and freedoms. But more important than that, what should really, really get you guys angry is that this is a threat to our modern democracy. I was watching Norm Chomsky talk about it. He's nailed the problem. He's worked it out a lot longer and before me. He's got a problem with corporations. And, you know, he was talking about the doomsday clock. This is a clock that scientists use to represent how close we was to actual doomsday, and at the moment it stands at around 100 seconds. Well, he's saying that we face a few real serious threats that put us that close to doomsday. One of them is a nuclear threat or a nuclear war, and the other one is the attack on democracy. And he's absolutely right. There's a massive attack on democracy right now, and the majority of people are unaware of it because it hasn't directly interfered with them, or they can't relate how it has. We've got some real serious issues coming soon. I mean, when you hear certain elitists saying that we should put people in jail for having an alternative view on climate, that's really shocking. That in itself is a very aggressive attack on democracy and attack on the freedom to have ideas and share them with who you want. You know, they are being attacked one by one. I mean, we also have a freedom to protest, but what happens when we protest? We get hit with truncheons, sprayed in the face with pepper spray or CS gas, and we get shot at with water cannons. And I've seen police officers abuse their authority, and it's no wonder the respect for the global police force, not just here in the UK but anywhere. You know, I'm not surprised they're losing respect when you see protesters being kneed in the face by an officer, or being kicked, or being dragged by the hair, or you see them push an old lady over onto the floor that's protesting, well within her rights to do so. It should get us all angry, and I understand it's off-putting, you know, to take to the streets with your signs and your banners, because in this day and age, you know, all these things not only have a cost, but they can also you can also end up being arrested for disturbing the peace when you are protesting. You know, it obviously costs some people money. If, like, we're going to travel from central of the United Kingdom down to London to protest, you know, there's obviously travelling costs involved. And then when you weigh up all these things, you think to yourself, well, I better not go, because not only can I not afford to get there through the travelling costs, but I might also come back with a criminal record. I might have to spend, you know, 24 hours in a cell because I'm protesting, as my rights say I'm allowed to. This is the world we're living in. And on top of that, I want to just explain something recently what's happened and how it could possibly affect you, because it is freedoms across the range that are under attack here. And we used to have, until recently, and I'll explain it why it isn't the case anymore. We used to have the right to set up a business and explore the free market with that business. Now, with companies like Google, Facebook, you know, some people could have a platform connected to one of these, you know, their own business connected to one of these platforms, but they can pull the switch at any time they want. And you know, it's not just companies like Google and YouTube that are committing these acts against democracy. It's the United Nations themselves, and they've proved it when they decided to go out for, if they want to remove somebody's personal website on the internet, they've got the power to do it by seizing or you know, rendering the domain name unresolvable. So even if you know the domain address, they can now pull the plug on that, so you won't find that company ever again. And you don't think that these millionaires won't use this so that they can capture or corner a specific part of the market? Of course they will. And if they do that, they can't be held accountable because no one's regulating it. And this is some of the things that is going on around the world. This is why our world's changing before our eyes. I always say this, you know, we live in a time where technology is advancing at an alarming rate. Yeah, if you go back 50 years, hardly any of us had TVs, or at least colour TVs. You know, and now look where we are with the modern phones, you know, and how reliant are we on modern smartphones, internet banking, etc. But the point is, I've always made this point, is that, you know, with the population that is increasing in the world, technological advancement increasing all around the world at an alarming rate, but what does it do? It cuts the workforce needed right down. I'll give you a few examples of what these smart arses have done over the last 20 years. Here in the UK, and you've probably noticed it in America as well, and Canada and other places, is we used to enjoy local town centres where, you know, there was a lot of private people that owned shops. Some shops would have sold camera equipment, you know, you'd have had your chemist for all your pharmaceuticals and things like that. But there was lots of shops. You had your butcher shops and all that. And then the government allowed planning permission for like Walmart type shops to open. In this country we've got Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, etc. What they allowed them to do is build these massive superstores, and the superstores didn't just sell food like they used to. They then went into clothing, and then they went into electronic goods, and then they went into, as well as, you know, meats and things like that, and vegetables. Well, all, you know, 20 years ago there was vegetable shops. You'd go to your greengrocers for your vegetables, you know, and then you nip next door to your butchers to get your meat. But it was a more friendlier, community supporting system then. So then we end up with these big supermarkets that have drawn all the traffic out of the towns and villages, and they decay. But it was before employing a lot more people. I mean, now what they've done in these superstores is they've gone for a self-service. So there's not even a cashier there. All the only people that are working there are probably the ones in the warehouse and the ones stacking the shelves. That's how greedy these corporations have become. And we've allowed them to do it by using them. I know it'd be very difficult for a lot of us not to use Microsoft or Google or YouTube. You know, it'd be really difficult now because our system has become so dependent on it. But, you know, it's not a good idea ever to allow bad behaviour to go unpunished, because it just gets worse if you do. And what we need to do now is put pressure on our politicians to change the laws with regards to human rights being violated by these big companies. And there is no reason why they shouldn't be held accountable when they commit crimes against freedoms that people have, especially, you know, the European freedom of rights. You know, we're talking, every country has its own type of system in place to ensure that a democracy survives, and certain benefits are given to everybody, and one of those are the human rights. Simple, but makes it very clear what you are and not allowed to have with regards to them. But at the moment it is only related to governments that are held accountable. It needs to be expanded now, especially when some of these companies like Facebook have 4 billion people subscribed to it, which is more than any other country's residents in the world. So these are the legal loopholes that are being exploited by, in my view, tyrannical governments. And they shouldn't be allowed to exploit these. And if your minister or your member of parliament or your congressman doesn't take up action, then you know the reasons why. Because that government don't want to allow you to have those freedoms, and they like the fact that they can exploit them by using companies like Google and YouTube. Because in an ideal world, Google or YouTube wouldn't be bothered whether people was talking about coronavirus or CO2, whether it is the cause of climate change or not. In a normal world, them companies wouldn't be bothered. So the pressure's coming from somewhere to these companies, and it's got to be coming from the government, because the topics and the issues that they're enforcing on is what these governments want to push, like mass vaccination. You ask any medical doctor in the world whether mandatory vaccinations are not assault or not. If you're being forced to have a vaccine, that is assault. And if you are threatened with your job because you won't take that vaccine, that is victimisation. And you can take those companies to court over it. I know someone was saying in the comments section the other day, we could challenge them, but to start the ball rolling would require £50,000. And that, for me and you guys, is just out of the question. We can't even clear, a £9,500 deficit that we have here at the observatory. What we're going to see more of is more people not having the enthusiasm to take to the streets with regards to this behaviour that the world governments are doing right now. And as a result, things are going to continuously get worse. And I'm not surprised when I see in the comment section people say, I really hope that the pole shift happens quicker than ever now. Let's create such a problem in the world, or hope that such a problem in the world happens, so that governments themselves lose control of their people. And governments should be paying attention to comments such as that, because it shows them how much people really trust the governments in the world now, because they've lost all respect. And I think a lot of it is not to do with anything with relationship to COVID-19, whilst we're seeing all around the world erupt with protests, and the mainstream media are hardly covering it. But we are seeing worldwide protests now, not, I believe, because of COVID-19 rules and regulations, and lockdowns, but because of people are just sick and tired and plain out frustrated of the way things are in this world. And we don't seem to see the people that are running the country doing the best for the people like they are actually employed to do. A bit later on, I was going to do an Earth Health at a glance on this afternoon for us, so that we can see what's going on with the anomalies that are taking place with our Earth. And we'll have a look at some of the data that one of our superstars over in Canada has sent us, and we'll make a few updates on the website. But guys, meanwhile, if I could just encourage a few more people to come forward and try and save this little beacon of light going by making a bit of support down in the description via PayPal, or joining us on Patreon. And the only other thing to say is guys, we do face much worse things to come, and it is going to seem like there is no light, but there is still plenty of things that can be done. I do believe that, and I'm not one for giving up easily. So we will remain hopefully all optimistic that we can sort out this, and we should also hope that we can hold these people accountable for what they've been getting away with for so long. Guys, take care of your loved ones. As always, bye for now.